It's time to unleash the expert. What is he an expert on? Relationships, sex, spirituality, and rediscovering yourself beyond the trauma. Get ready to unleash more purpose, passion, and pleasure in your life. Here's the expert himself, Mr. Brannon Patrick.
All right, you guys, welcome to the Brannon Patrick Show. Good to have you here. Before I get started, I just want to remind you, as this is starting, I can use as many ratings and reviews as I can get. So if you like the content so far, it's been helpful, please do me a solid and go over and give me a rating. I would really appreciate it. So, but I want to get into the content today because I feel like well, obviously, I podcasted with her for like 4 years, so we could do a lot of content. But I got my good friend Ashlynn here, and I just really appreciate you coming on, Ashlynn.
Of course.
I think what we get in today is going to be very different than a lot of the content that we've done for 4 years, and I'm excited to dig into it a little bit. So.
I love it. I was thinking the other day, I sent an old podcast of ours to a client and I thought, I don't know what I sounded like in this, but I'm sure it's great. But I'm a different person now.
Hey, we had some good content though. I mean, pat on our back.
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a girl who she found out about Betrayal December and it's March. She binged our entire podcast, 4 years of content in those 3 months.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So she's like, it's saving me. So yeah, it's still very relevant.
Very relevant, very good content. But we've moved on. We're 2 years almost from wrapping that show up. And and we've kind of gone our different directions. And I think we're both doing some really good in the world. You have your This Is Ashlynn show, which is going good, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then you're doing retreats. I'm doing retreats. So we're still doing a lot of good stuff.
Yes.
But I want to dig in a little bit with you, Ashlynn, into kind of your personal story and ask some of those questions and kind of take a look at some things that might have caused you some harm, and some things that might have just been very confusing and difficult to figure out. And the reason I bring this up is because I've seen you progress. I've seen it happen. And I want to kind of take the audience from the beginning to that progression to where you're at now. But specifically, what I want to talk about is sexual development and healthy sexuality. And what is healthy sexuality? When I first met you, Ashlynn, you weren't totally unhealthy. Don't worry. You were in a process of growth. You were in a process of change. You were doing therapy. And I also picked up on sex is pretty scary. And sexuality was something that we didn't talk about a ton at the beginning of when we started everything. I'm curious if you could back up a little bit for us and just talk about like what was sexual development like for you? How did you learn about sex? What were some of the common things that you were taught as a woman in the church, as a young girl in the church? What did you experience?
Okay. Well, I had one sex talk with my dad that I remember in his office, and it was the basic, I think it was probably 4 minutes long.
So and talk.
Yes, like there is one kind of sex and it's between a man and a woman and the end. Okay. And then I remember having
no real details.
Brannon, I didn't know what a lot of things were until I was in high school or graduated from high school. I was very naive.
You're talking like anatomy wise or just like
absolutely. Like don't look down there.
Yeah.
Like it really for me was, well, that I have OCPD. So that scrupulosity is mixed in there. So for me, when you tell me that, hey, this is the rule, someone told me, don't look, don't touch. So I did not look and did not touch anywhere below my, belly button because that was the rule. That was a rule. And when I got married, then I could look and touch. And so
So you were
blows my mind
walking around
now.
with like this mystery down there of like sensual pleasure that like was off limits.
Totally off limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so not a lot of education. Well, no education really.
Hang on, Ashley,
And
I want to ask you this rule of don't look, don't touch.
yeah.
Is that just kind of in the air that you breathe, or was it explicitly told to you like, oh no, you don't? Or was
No,
it you knew that
it was definitely like I knew it was off limits. I also, when I went to church, masturbation was talked about for boys, not for girls.
Yes.
And so I didn't even know girls did that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how naive I was.
Right.
And so it just seemed like when we were having lessons at church that were about being pure and saving yourself, it was definitely directed like the boys are going to do their thing and they need to be careful, but the girls, you're really in charge. You're the gatekeeper. So you need to make sure you're dressing a certain way. You need to make sure that you're presenting yourself a certain way. Don't date, boys like on your own. It should always be in a group setting, which is laughable to me now. Like we're teaching to go and be monogamous, but also don't be monogamous.
Yes.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Right.
But there's an undertone that I'm hearing as you're talking about this of sexuality is a boys thing, and it's
absolutely
this thing that boys do that like women and girls need to manage and control to make sure that the boys don't go do crazy things. Right?
Yeah. The gatekeeper, that to me
Ugh.
was just, it was right on. Like women are the gatekeeper by even the way we dance, the dressing, the way we talked, the flirting. And so I was just, I remember in high school, just, I wanted to kiss boys so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I had boyfriends, but I remember every Friday night, like, let's go find boys and we'll kiss them. And then I was terrified. Like I never actually did, but I definitely could
but
feel.
You wanted to.
I could feel those feelings inside of me. I just didn't, the fear was way too big.
It's interesting, and I'm going to admit something here that's pretty embarrassing. I was a fully trained therapist. This was years ago. I was a fully trained therapist, and I got a client, a couple, and they came in and we were talking about his porn and masturbation issues, and he has these issues, and we need to fix them. And she got alone with me, and she admitted that, hey, she said I have a masturbation problem, and as a fully trained adult male therapist, I sat there and thought, wait, what? Like you do that? Like,
yeah. See, we're not that different.
You're not supposed to do that. You're a woman. Like,
Isn't that crazy?
You're not even tempted to do that as a woman, right? Because like that's a dude's thing. Like that's
and if you are tempted, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, if you are tempted to do that, like, that it just was like so foreign to me. And then I've since discovered that masturbation in adolescence for girls is absolutely normal and common, and it happens just like it does for boys. And what do you know? Women actually have sexuality. Huh? What?
It's so true.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie. I think women are incredibly powerful sexually. And I just had no idea until the last 10 years. So yes.
That a trait of feminism, like really empowered feminism, is sensuality and sexuality. And men in our society, in our religion, men have owned it, and actually women have gone along with that. I'll give you sex when you want it.
Mm-hmm. It's a chore.
It's about pleasing you. It's about getting you off. As long as that happens, then we have a good sex life. Mm-hmm. Bullshit. Like, not true.
Yeah.
Women's sexuality. How come women, and we've talked about this before, how come women can have more powerful and more orgasms than a man? What?
Exactly. Okay, Brannon, there's so many. We could talk for like 8 hours on this, but I remember when I did actually get married, there was zero advice. My mom said, you'll figure it out. My sweet mom did not know I would not figure it out. And just the like, oh, this is not enjoyable for me because I had zero education. My partner had zero education in a woman. Like, he understood himself because he'd done that for years.
Porn.
Yes. And so here I am going, there must be something wrong with me because he's using porn as education, which is not. And so I didn't enjoy it for the first 6 years of my 21-year marriage.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, I did not enjoy it. It was painful. It was absolutely a chore. And I looked at it like, it's so messy. I don't like it. Like, I had a lot of sensory issues around it. And it's laughable now because now I promote sex blankets and I'm like, get over your sensory issues. It's fantastic.
Right. But okay, we're going to get to that in a minute, how you've actually gotten there, because from where you've come from, it sounds like sex was just this like gross, painful thing.
Yes. And I will add, I had my older siblings all got pregnant, right? As they were dating. So it was shown to me through 3 generations, my grandma, my mom, and my sisters, that sex equals pregnancy.
You get pregnant
and it will change your life forever. And so I was also scared of it for that reason.
Right.
And I was told by my grandma and my mom, like, don't be like us.
Right. Interesting. So, okay, I can't touch these parts of me because that's sinful and shameful. I'm told just like a 4-minute talk about it, and it's this awkward talk that my dad gives me. And then, oh, by the way, if you have sex, you'll get pregnant. Like, zippity doodah. Can't wait to like really explore this part of life, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'll add, Brannon, I don't talk about this super public, but I was sexually assaulted in high school. And that drastically affected the way I showed up in my marriage. And I didn't realize that until I started recovery and started
trauma there.
There was, because and for a lot of years, I didn't understand. I did EMDR work around this trauma. And I didn't understand that it was affecting me the way it was until I said it out loud to my therapist. And she immediately said, do you not realize this is not your fault? Like, what happened? I had no idea. I'd carried it all those years as
you were sexually assaulted, and you were carrying, I created this somehow.
Yeah. It was my fault.
Because you're the gatekeeper.
I was wearing a skirt. My goodness. Like, totally.
You brought this onto yourself. Yeah. Listen to that. That is really
harmful. It's horrible.
That's horrible. Yet I understand why you felt that way and why you believe those things, because you were taught those things in many ways. I'm curious. So I was raised in the church as a boy in the church. There's certain messages about sex that we get. What I'm hearing from you, and maybe you could talk a little more to this, it was, you're the gatekeeper, and this is a boys thing. It's not a girls thing. So on one hand, it's like, hey, sex isn't your thing. But on the other hand, you still had a lot of shame about sexuality, right? Like it was still taught to you that pleasure was bad. Pleasure's not, like, it's lustful, it's sinful, it's not okay. You still picked up those messages, although you were also getting and this isn't your thing, that's a boy's thing. So it's kind of a double whammy there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. And then to be taken advantage of and to carry that as well. So it was just, I had a lot of things going against me, and then got married. And the wedding day, as Christians, the idea is you save yourself for marriage.
Right.
And so we get married, and that day it's like, now everything's open.
On. Yeah, like, here we go.
Here, you're free to do whatever you want. And it was like, wait, what? I don't even, I've never even seen a naked, like, no. So it was a lot for me. Yeah. And I do feel, I mean, I couldn't have done anything. I could have been more proactive in educating myself and not relying on other people. But
I mean, how old were you, Ashlynn?
I was 19 when I got married.
You were a baby.
Yeah.
Still. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could have, would have, should have, but like,
yes,
you were doing the best you could. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you got married so young.
Yeah.
19.
It was just like, if I get married, then that I had no plan for my life except to get married and have babies. And then I couldn't have babies for 8 years. So I was like, I guess I'll go to college. I guess I'll have a career.
But yeah.
So, oh, Brannon.
So let's go through this a little bit. So in the marriage, did you feel like sex was still for him and it was my job to provide and I needed to keep him satisfied and keep him happy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we did I think it was probably 2 years into the marriage, we went to our religious leader and just said, we're struggling. I think he went as like maybe confessing some porn and masturbation. And then they brought me in as like, hey, we need to work through this. And he actually, it's kind of unusual, but he sent us to get toys for me. Like, hey, she needs to
Wait,
be a
Bishop
I
did?
know. I know
What?
we had, it's so unusual
Heck
because
freaking yeah, Bishop.
right. So he was maybe the only advocate for me that I'd ever had, ever,
No,
which
this
is
is more
odd.
betrayal stuff, right? Because
I mean, the week of our marriage, I knew he was looking at porn. I did not know until then, but it
gotcha.
was just this secret weird thing where I wouldn't say anything, but I knew he was like, I'd wake up in the night and hear kind of thing. So,
Right.
6 years into the marriage is when he had that emotional affair. And so it was before that. So
I want to clarify, Ashton. Like I'm saying, heck yeah, Bishop. It is good if a bishop's like sex positive and
Mhm.
encouraging individuals and couples to own their sexuality. It's not good if a bishop is saying, hey, you need to spice up your sex life so you can be enough for your partner so that they don't have to look at porn and
Yeah. And
right?
that's, I think his intentions were pure. Like he really was like, hey, she's not enjoying sex over here. Maybe help her out.
Okay,
Like
nice.
I really do look at it like that.
Okay.
However, I could be wrong. He could have
No,
been like, it
but
was
that's what
my,
you felt from him.
I did take on the belief that it was my fault that he was looking at porn and masturbating because I was right there in front of him and he wasn't choosing me. But then I also am like, I wasn't interested in choosing him at the time either. It was
Right.
just
Right.
a weird dynamic.
Right. So that was the bishop maybe actually being helpful, trying to help.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is
And,
probably
and it changed my world. Like,
okay.
oh, this is what an orgasm is. Okay.
Like what? That
Yeah.
exists? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so fast forward a little bit. The infidelity happened, the betrayals happened in your marriage. Um, and it led you guys, I know I'm fast forwarding, but it led you
Yeah.
guys
Totally.
into treatment for
Mhm.
sex addiction, for betrayal trauma. Um, and so what happened in terms of kind of your sexual development and view of sex when that started to happen?
Mhm. Um, I I would say we had a average sex life at that point. We were having sex regularly and we were both enjoying the process enough that we would have an orgasm.
So
Okay.
it was better than
Um,
what it was.
absolutely. Like introducing me to what it even felt like to have an orgasm and that my pleasure did matter, did change a lot of things for me.
Okay.
Um, but going into, this was 14 years into our marriage that we started recovery. And it was very scary for me because of, they're saying, hey, this is going to take 7 years for him to come out of this. This is going to take you probably just as long to get over this.
Yeah.
And there's so many layers and you got to go back into your trauma of what you brought into the marriage. And it was like, oh no, it was a lot to start with. And I was very much uninterested in healing my sexual side. I just wanted to get to a place where I didn't hate him.
That was so out of the realm of possibility.
It was like,
Your sexual self was like, yeah, throw that on the shelf, like way
yes,
up there. Because
yes.
right now I'm just barely breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're going to treatment and they're saying things like in 7 years you guys can be okay. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh my gosh, like how am I not like how are we going to keep this all together?
Yes.
Okay. So question for you is and this is what I see a lot in treatment is that just like when you're taught as a kid in the church about sexuality is that the boy's sexuality is the thing that needs to be managed and can be the problem. And a lot of times in treatment, what I see is that people come in and they say, okay, what we need to do is make sure that his sexuality is in check. And if it's in check, then we have hope for the coupleship. We have hope for the relationship. So let's like really focus on making sure that he's faithful. And what I mean by faithful is that he's not sexual, except for only with you in the bedroom, and that's it. And a lot of times that's what treatment does is, and it sends messages both to the partner, and to the individual struggling with the sexual compulsive behavior. The message sent to the partner is like, look, we need to help him control this, and we need to make sure that he doesn't do these things. And the message sent to him is lust and sexuality is so bad, and you need to make sure that you're sober, right?
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Did that happen?
Yes. And I couldn't see that at the time, and I don't think he did either. But yes, years into recovery, it's saying, wait, what did we just do to ourselves? We've shut down parts of us that actually we didn't want to shut down.
Right.
And so, yeah, I don't know if we were more guinea pigs. I do know they do it different now. You do it different now.
You were guinea pigs, Ashlyn. Let's be honest.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It all worked out.
Learned a lot through the process.
Yes.
But I gotta say, there's still like programs and things out there that are all about force and fear and control and shutting down sexuality and calling that recovery and calling that progression. And I actually think it creates cycles of compulsion, and it creates cycles of, it creates disconnection from partners. It destroys trust. Like all of those things happen when it's all about making sure that sexuality is not there, because the reality is that sexuality is absolutely in both of those people in that relationship. Sexuality is a healthy thing. Sexuality is a good thing. And just trying to shut it down and pretend like it's not there actually just it continues the same things that you learned when you were a kid. Right. And so
just amplified, because I'm in a relationship. Like I have all the framework to have a healthy sex life, and I don't have one. Right.
So you're in a relationship, you have the framework, but you can't, like, it's not working.
Yeah. And during this time, we still had sex. I know a lot of people do recovery different, and, we either shut it down and there's lots of boundaries, or there's some boundaries, or it's free for all. And I'm going to win you back by being hypersexual. I was just kind of in between. Like, I didn't feel like I was betraying myself by having sex with
you were
this
using
person.
Sex to try to force, or not force, but to control, like him wanting you.
They're up for sure. That was part of it. I know it was like, if I can show up, then that will help him, rather than
it be about
I want to show up and create some repair in our relationship in this area.
Right. Okay. So let's kind of keep moving along here. You sent me a text one day, and it was Finlayson 5, and you wrote like, I'm listening to this and I just can't, I can't anymore. What do you think about it, Brannon? Like, I can't listen to this. It's so triggering. This is so hard. Could you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. And this was maybe 4 years into recovery. I'm thinking it was pretty far in there.
We were doing the podcast for a while.
Yeah. So maybe, so up until that point, I had done the EMDR around my sexual trauma before marriage. Okay. And that did relieve a lot of things. Like, because of that trauma, there were certain things that were off limits for me. Like, I don't want to do that because it would take me back to the trauma.
Trigger you into the
trauma. And so
makes sense.
And because of that, he missed out and I missed out.
Right.
And I know that now, because once I was able to heal that and we incorporated that into our sex life, I was like, oh my gosh, well, no wonder I didn't like sex. Like we were missing out on this huge part.
Right.
So,
but Ashlynn, for good reason, you had significant trauma there that was, you were in a protective mode.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Yes.
But you did your work around that.
Yeah. So I had done some work, and I remember my therapist Amy kind of pushing me and saying, you should really start working through some of the sexual stuff. And I had my former partner he would buy books and just kind of push me, and I didn't like that.
Nudge you.
Yes.
Come on, work on your sexuality.
Well, yeah. Like, look at, you're getting better. Go work on that thing. And I'm like, dude, leave me alone. Like, let me go at my pace. So I pushed back.
Pressure doesn't work, does it?
I pushed back too hard. And now I told you I'm jealous at how quickly people are moving through to find their sexuality in recovery, because I waited so long. It was so scary to me. And so when I started, it was a Finlayson Fife. She has online courses, and this was my brave moment of saying, okay, I'm going to choose to work on this myself. And her method is coming from a Christian background. So I felt safe in that, like, she'll understand why I am the way I am.
Right.
And yet here I was going, she's saying things that recovery has said not to do. And she's a sex therapist, and she's saying we should do them. And she's also Christian. Like, I'm so confused, and it scared me. And so, yes, I vividly remember talking to you and saying, like, help me understand this. And I remember you just being kind of quiet, like, I'm not sure what to say here, because, and I sat there going, I know I'm wrong because he's not saying anything.
Yeah.
But I'm not ready. I wasn't ready. I did that course I did it 3 times through.
Oh, really? Wow.
I had pushed myself because it was so uncomfortable the first time. And I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was like, keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going, Ashlynn.
Understand it, like, fully.
Yes.
Saying.
Yeah. And my worry was more for women who, because this is what I did when we found out about the affairs and the porn use and all this. We went to a sex therapist in the beginning because we thought that must be the problem. That's
fix your sex life, and then okay.
And so I was worried that people were buying her program and they'd had affair. They were in the similar boat, and that's where they go. So I was like feeling protective. I think if people are doing this and they haven't done any work in recovery, they're just going to bypass all that. And it just was,
Wait, so what you're saying, I really do want to flush out here.
Okay.
So your fear was like, oh my gosh, because here's the thing that I want to explain. If you've been betrayed, and trust is shattered in your relationship, then the first thing to fix isn't to go hop in the bed and like, hey, let's figure this out and like make sex the thing that we need to fix, because the foundation of the relationship is broken. Intimacy can't really happen because trust and safety aren't there. And so for a couple who's got this broken trust going on, going to a sex therapist, and that sex therapist is saying, hey, let's have you engage more sexually, can really do problems sometimes.
Yeah.
Unless that reparative work with the trust is done first, then that push into intimacy is not a good thing.
Yes.
Once that trust work is done, then absolutely it's healthy for both partners to explore and be their sexual selves in an open, transparent way. And so Finlayson Fife, she speaks to that. She speaks to owning your sexuality, exploring your sexuality. I was listening to her the other day, and she was talking about how in a healthy relationship, a couple can hold novelty and safety at the same time, where, as a person, I can come in and I can say, "Gal, I have these fantasies," or I thought about doing this thing or that or whatever. And my partner could listen and understand and hold space and validate, but still not feel pressured to give up her truths or her boundaries or who she is. So there's safety for me. There's novelty and safety at the same time. I'm going pretty far with this.
But I love it.
Here's my point, Ashlynn. when all of a sudden Finlayson Fife is put in front of you, and your level of trust and safety is so low, still, it's still not high enough to really push you into exploring sexuality. Of course, that's triggering. Of course, that's like, oh my gosh, I can't handle that. And that's kind of what I saw. I realized, hey, there's some work to be done before Ashlynn fully digests everything that she's taking in right now. And she can't see what Finlayson Fife is actually saying here. And I love that. I mean, it's so you, Ashlynn, to do it 3 times and like figure it out and get there.
I'm a weirdo.
That's awesome.
And I will say my therapist did the program the same time I did. Like that was her way of saying, like, I'll be safe with you. Like we can do this.
Awesome.
And so that felt like, okay, I have someone who understands how weird my background is and also how hypersensitive I am, but who like we can do this. And so I loved that. And the truth is, I love Finlayson Fife. She's been on our podcasts and I definitely love her content. It just, for me to step into that ownership took me a minute.
So were some of I'm curious, maybe we could back up just a little, like what were some of the triggering things that she was saying? Do you remember?
Yes and no. Definitely exploring your body. That I was like, wait, and in religion, even when we're married, we are taught not to do those things, right? Like
it's funny, Finlayson Fife, because she doesn't go all the way with it. She's not like, hey, you should totally masturbate. She doesn't do that, but she's like, you should explore your body.
Which means
we all know what she's talking about,
But for me, Brannon, it makes me like my heart hurt that as a woman in her late 30s, I was told to explore my body and it scared me.
Yeah.
A woman who'd had sex for over a decade,
had 2 children,
had 2 kids. And I was like, wait, what? It's terrible. It's terrible because I wanted to follow the rules. I wanted to be a good Christian. And that to me meant you don't do that.
Yep.
You just don't. It's like a mutual relationship with your partner. Yep. And so we had found ways that it would work with us, but it was always, for me, now I know it's not about the masturbation. It was about the secrets and just how, I mean, our marriage was full of secrets and hiding things and shame on both sides. And so opening that up as like, wait, this is the thing that hurt me and you're telling me to go and do it. It just was kind of a lot.
There's the messaging, right? Like you're telling me to go do the very thing that has destroyed our life.
Yes.
So what? And you're absolutely right. And Finlayson Fife said this on our episode. I don't know if you remember this. She said the issue is not the sexuality. The issue is the lack of transparency in a relationship.
And ownership. Like if you're going to say like, I'm going to continue to masturbate, own it.
Own it.
Like instead of keep hiding it and keep relapsing and,
Right. So just show up as you in that relationship and then navigate that together with your partner. I really do appreciate her because she's so courageous to actually kind of walk that line with people who have a hard time hearing it.
Yeah, me.
The possibility of hearing it, that sexuality is okay, that it's not just bad, that it's not going to destroy your life. And
that it's for women too. That, I mean, just pleasure alone, that it's mutual. Wow. Okay. And it's funny because I have friends who they were not raised like me. They don't have the trauma like me. And they've only had really great sexual experiences. And so they don't know, they can't understand what it's been like for me, like who I am today. Like, do you understand how hard I've worked to be this sexual being?
That place.
And to own it and be like, I'm really great. I'm a great lover. I can own that. Mm-hmm. You don't understand what it took me to get there because you've only experienced healthy.
Right.
And that's fantastic for you. And I want that for everyone. Also for those of us who did not, it's a lot of work.
Well, and I gotta say, Ashlynn, from a man's perspective, from a woman's perspective, being born into a culture and a religion with so many beliefs and just so much around sexuality, you don't even know. You don't even know what's off, or what, like, why this is broken, or you don't understand that. And you just start to take on these messages of shame and self-rejection and force and control. I had a client, she was like 45, she'd had 10 kids. And I can't remember what I said. It was something like, do you know, I say things in my office in therapy sessions that you normally don't say. Anyways, I can't remember the context of the conversation, but it was something to the effect of, do you even know where your clitoris is? What your clitoris is? And she looked at me and said, what's that? Like, she's 45.
Yeah.
She's had 10 kids. Something,
I get it. Like, it's so
broken.
I get it. And it's, yeah, one of the religious leaders in my neighborhood that I live in now. So I left the religion 3 years ago. And she sent me a message 2 years ago and said, because of you talking about sex in an open way, I had my first orgasm, and I'm over 40.
Hallelujah. Yes.
And she's like, it just was so sweet to me, because I thought I would never know that looking at her. Like,
Ashlynn, look what you did. What did you do? And this is what Finlayson 5 does. You somehow gave her permission.
yeah.
I know that might sound weird, her having an orgasm. But like another woman who was raised in the church, who had this sexual trauma, and I would say sexual spiritual trauma, who now realized that, hey, I can actually have some pleasure in my life and enjoy that pleasure and own it. And she's just thought, oh my gosh, if Ashlynn's doing it, maybe I can too.
Well, and it meant more because I had left religion and she didn't not trust me anymore. She was like, I'm still here listening, and I'm still, it just was cool for me to see that she could see through this little barrier that I had created by leaving, and saw that she still deserved a healthy sex life.
Yeah. I got to ask you, on Instagram, so Ashlynn has, like, I've watched you just run the gamut here. And some of your stories on Instagram, I love it. But I'm like, whoa, like she's throwing that out there, or that question, or holy cow, like Ashlynn's going there. No way. I'm curious, how comfortable are you when you put stuff out there like that? And then what are some of the responses that you get back from people?
Yeah.
It's very sex positive.
Definitely. And this is the most I've talked, I would say, about my own sex experience. It's usually I open up my Instagram stories once a month, and then every day in the month of September for Sextember. So I'm opening to anonymous questions and anonymous answers. So I'm not usually saying, here's my experience.
Right.
Sometimes
you're asking the questions and exploring with.
Yes, I'm giving them space. And so sometimes I'll pop in if there's betrayal ones, because people will say, leave him, he's a dirty, and I'm like, like, let's soften this a little. But there are some questions that years ago I would not post, because it was like, I was not in line with those thoughts. And it's like that I used to get a lot of like, how do we feel about open marriages and And I was like, we're not going to go there, because I definitely don't. That's not where I'm
automatically just nope. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's my platform. I can do what I want. Right.
Absolutely.
But in the last 2 years, I still believe in monogamy, and I still allow, and now I allow those questions to pop through. And it's interesting to me because, I really do try to keep it anonymous. I don't share, I try not to even look. I just hurry and cross out names. It's cool to me to see the people who are daring, like brave enough to say, I have questions and I have never dared ask anyone, or I don't know how to Google, like it's scary to Google these kinds of things. And so they put it out there, and then to have so many people respond. like I can help with that. I was once there, and this is where we found, and it's not like this is gold. This is, sometimes it's like, you should go see a doctor, or you should go to a therapist,
Right.
or, like, don't get your answers from the internet. But I've learned a lot. I learn every single time, if not education, I learn empathy, more empathy towards those of us who have been in the non-pleasure sex and who want to have pleasure.
Right. I can't remember exactly the question, but I was reading through them, and it was something like, I can't remember. Don't quote me on this, but it was something like, I'm a woman and I enjoy anal. Does anybody else enjoy anal sex? And and the comments, like, women came on and were like, yes, I do. And it's interesting, to like think about, as a woman, you shouldn't even be a sexual being.
Yeah.
A woman, you need to control men's sexuality. To juxtapose that all the way to, hey, we're women talking about what we enjoy in terms of anal sex or other things that, like, and to me, having that open dialogue, and also knowing that you're not alone in enjoying pleasure and sexuality and exploring things, to me, that's so healthy. And I think from certain perspectives, that's looked at as, that is so unhealthy and bad and wrong and not okay, right? And so I'm just glad. I think it's hard to get over the hump, so to speak.
Yeah.
Of rejecting it, feeling all that shame. It's all about fear, to embracing it and making it about it's such a beautiful part of this existence that we're in. Sexuality is amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's funny because you say it takes a minute to get over that hump. Like, absolutely. I was maybe the slowest, but I have one of my best friends now. She was in one of my betrayal trauma groups. And when September came, it's like I'm a different person. Like, I'm leading my groups here, but then I'm like, I'm over here on social media, and I'm also like, I'm open over here. So to some of them, I am two different people.
Right.
Right. In those, when they're not ready for September or sex chats, they're like, okay, unsubscribe to Ashlynn. Like, well, I love her in here.
How I was when you threw Finlayson 5. It's like, okay, Ashlynn, like, I can't be this part of me with you right now, because you're not ready for it.
Yeah. And so I still have a lot of people who unfollow me when September comes, because it's everyday sex. And she said that one year, the first year she was in my group, she unfollowed me. And then she said, I cannot wait for September this year. I'm so ready.
Interesting.
And it was just so fun to see, like, I saw myself in her, right? It's so much fear, and like, that's not us, and I can't go there. And now she sent me a picture for Valentine's and said, my husband bought me a vibrator this year. Like, how weird is this, that this is where we're at?
Yeah. Here's the thing, Ashlynn, you or I, we're not saying somebody should be somewhere, like they should be happy that their husband bought them a vibrator, for like somebody who's,
because that can be a negative. I've had it in a negative way.
Triggering and horrible and the worst thing ever. Yes. Like, what? Like, pressury, horribleness. Like, why? And so, like, we're not saying you should be to that place where you're just enjoying sex and it's pleasurable, and you are where you are. That's okay. Yeah. I think the message that I think both of us want to send is progress. Yes. Do your work. Move forward wherever you're at, and it's okay that that's where you're at. But there is a lot of pleasure to be had. There's a lot of connection to self. I through sexual experience, I believe we experience intimacy with self, intimacy with others, even intimacy with God. Some of the most spiritual experiences I've had have been sexual.
Hey, I remember you saying that and being like, I want that. I don't even know what that means, but I want that. And that was me working through all the trauma and being in a place where I thought I was in this sexual health great place for myself. And I was, but it showed me that there was still more, that I could still have more connection and more pleasure and more experiences. And so that kind of opened me up to the idea that I could be open to the idea that I'm not there, I'm healing.
Right.
And it's this ongoing process.
You are where you are, and that's okay. And but it's an ongoing process. And I'm gonna look at things. I'm gonna challenge some things.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my work.
Well, and when we get triggered, right? It's just our bodies saying, hey, like it's sending me a message. And so if I actually listen, I have some work to do. And if I push it away, like I was doing, and just saying like, no, 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 instead of questioning and saying, but why no?
So in other words, if you hated this episode, then maybe there's something to do.
Then why?
Yeah,
why do you hate us?
Yeah, look at that. If this was very uncomfortable or it triggered a lot of your shame, then there's some opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. I have to add though, Brannon, because I did do courses, I read books. We did a lot of trauma work and of course the therapy individually and together as a couple. The last 6 years of my marriage, I had a great sex life. I felt I was happy. Okay.
Right.
I did add cannabis as an experience to open up and let down walls that I could not get down in therapy. And it opened up my world of like, one, it helped me with the sensory stuff. I just realized like, why do I care so much? Why do I care if it's messy? Like there's just a lot of belief in me that I wanted to just be done with. And so I had that experience of just, I'm taking this cannabis as an experiment, as an experience to be intentional about unlocking and letting down walls that I have just been just like so fierce about holding.
Right. And that didn't mean that every time you had sex, there was cannabis.
No.
But what that did do is when you were able to take that, it allowed you to experience what sex was like without the fear, without the protective parts getting in the way. Yeah.
It showed me that there was this part inside of me who was there and just guarded. Like they wanted out, right? And so it really changed my world.
Because you could actually experience that just pleasure part.
And one of the coolest parts was like, oh, I don't have to use cannabis to have this great experience.
To go there. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm so glad you shared that.
Yeah. And then I got divorced. and that was a whole nother unraveling for me to say, now what does sexuality look like for me?
Yeah.
I'm not religious anymore. So I don't have rules, right?
Yeah.
And I have values.
Right.
And I don't think I kept having men who would reach out on the dating apps or even on my Instagram. They'd see that I'm talking about sex, so they think I'm hypersexual.
Yeah.
Are you in your hoe stage? Are you just sleeping around? And I'm like, actually, no. Like I never. My values are still in a place where that I don't want to go there. But I have a lot of people in my life who that is part of their journey. And we've decided it's now named not your hoe stage, it's a sacral healing stage.
Oh, okay. That's a positive spin on it. But you're making an important point here, which is we're taught that we need to control our sexuality in order to not basically live in our quote unquote hoe stage, right?
Yes.
But what you're saying is, you know what? I don't need force and control and fear and all these things to step into who I am and live with my values and be a healthy sexual being. I can just be that. I can just own that. And it doesn't mean I'm going to sleep with everybody. And I think that's the fallacy that really needs to be let go of is we don't need fear. We don't need control. In fact, we need to get rid of that so that we can fully be who we are as healthy sexual beings. So, Ashlynn, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for the chat.
You're
always good.
You have good content. You've always had good content, but more importantly with you, Ashlynn, is your example. I think that's why people resonate with you is because you're just real and you're doing your own work and it's just awesome. So you've given that to us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. You guys, if this was helpful, then please share it. If it was uncomfortable, then please look within and we'll talk to you next time. We'll see you.
Thank you.